Hey you all, Farmer Jesse here. I shot this exact same video yesterday, but when I was editing it, I realized like it just wasn't good enough. So anything we put out, I really want it to be high quality and to have some value for you. And when it doesn't, I'm just not gonna put it up here. Because I think that's crazy to ask people for their time and not give them anything. So I watched the video and I thought, man, this is just not good enough. So I'm gonna reshoot it because there's a lot of value to be had in what's going on the farm right now, but there was no value in yesterday's video. So redoing it, and I'm gonna show you some things. In fact, some of the value is gonna come from some of the mistakes we made, and that's also the reason yesterday's video kind of lacked any sort of charisma. It's just, I was feeling deflated, and today I feel a little better. So we're gonna show you around the farm, talk about some mistakes, and probably some other stuff. So let's do it. Real quick, before we get going, I want to give a few shout outs to some of our Patreon members. At a certain level, you get a shout out in the video, so I want to go ahead and do those. Tiffany Jackson from North Carolina, thank you for your support. Stephen Cornett and Dawson Mahalko, you all are awesome. You were both, not only both supporters of the show, but Dawson was actually on Stephen Cornett's YouTube channel recently. You should go check that out. I'll put the link above. That's Nature's Always Right is Stephen's YouTube channel. Jackson Roulette, who's obviously not just a supporter of the show, but he's also my partner in no-tillgrowers.com. And Connor Crickmore, also a huge supporter of the show. So shout out to you all. All right, let's get into the farm. Right here, you will see some really beautiful Napa cabbage that is also beautifully flowering. My buddy Pavel was right. He was like, if you plant it in December, it's gonna flower, it's gonna bolt, and it is. But here's the thing. I saw it was flowering in time. The leaves are still beautiful and tender. Pretty leaves. So, this is a whole other video, but Spark Community Cafe is gonna be opening soon. And I called the chef that we hired for this restaurant that we're helping to open, Spark Community Cafe. It's a pay what you can restaurant. I'm gonna go into big detail on that soon, but for the moment, let's just say, I called, one of the big things we're doing at that restaurant is we wanna support farmers when something goes a little bit wrong, or maybe they have a bumper of something that they can't sell. We wanna try and find avenues to use that produce. So I called my buddy Isaiah, who's the chef, and we're gonna put this on the menu. Cabbage leaves. So I'm super excited about that. It's kind of our first foray with this, and we're opening like next week. So more on that later, but yeah, basically I tried to have Napa cabbage for March, and I got cabbage leaves. So it was an experiment, so with experiments comes an inherent, this may totally fail, and it totally failed. But not a total loss, right? Because I'm gonna find an avenue to sell it. Anyway, spending way too much time on the cabbage. Some things that are going on in this tunnel. We've also got radishes right here, and some lettuce and green onions, and a little bit of leeks on the end there. And then that last bed is actually watermelon radishes, and I'm kind of debating whether or not to just pull them and replant something else that's a little faster. But now that I look at them, they're actually looking pretty good. They got hit with a hard frost the other day, so that kind of I don't know. It kind of set them back a little bit. But they seem to be recovering, so I may leave them because watermelon radishes is actually a really good seller for us, and they're really great flavor, so I want to keep them, but we'll see if it works out. Anyway, lettuce, celery, kale, lettuce. You're gonna hear the word lettuce a lot in the next few minutes. This is actually gonna be a high rotation tunnel all summer. And then in the fall, like in August, I'm gonna put in all tomatoes and try and go into November with tomatoes. I'm gonna eat some of this cabbage. It's still so good. Gosh, it's like floral. It's really good. All right, open this guy up. Lots of lettuce. We got a lot of lettuce going on. So the reason that I was kind of bummed yesterday, or just kind of down, we went and visited our buddy Jackson, and the when we got back, there had been a crazy windstorm and it threw all the tarps. You can see way out there, the tarps are off that plot and all the row covers off this plot. It threw everything, like all the tarps, all the row cover, threw it everywhere. And it ripped a giant hole in our caterpillar tunnel. So I'm fixing that today and yesterday and the day before. That's fun, but I'm trying to get it reset up, and it's really my fault. It just wasn't well structured to begin with, so I have to redo it, which, you know, happens. This I'm really excited about. This is doing really well. This is just the garlic peas, and you can see it looks pretty good. I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna do about the peas yet, but they're staying really close to the ground. So right now it looks like the garlic's winning that race, and I'm pretty good with that. All right, so failure. How many failures have I gotten to? This will be number 3. The December sown carrots. Could have been a success. They weren't, but they could have been. They could have been if I'd done a few different things. And one of those things was that I would need to put the row cover on tighter. It was just a little bit too loose and it was touching the ground, but also it was flapping in the wind. We have had so much wind that it basically just whipped the carrots out of there and just crushed them. And underneath the hoops that we had down, they were fine, right? There were carrots there. But it was spotty. It was like a little wave of carrots. So I had to get rid of it. I've started re-sowing it. There's some already sown on the end, so I'll have carrots in April, but I won't have them in March. This has done pretty well. I think I've talked about this a little bit. This row cover blew off last night, but this is the spinach. So yeah, I should say before I go on is that we will probably try some carrots again next December, but I'm gonna try a little bit heavier row cover and try and tighten the row cover a little bit better. But I think it can be done. Yeah, those are the kind of things that I'm not going to experiment with is hard, because when an experiment fails, it really bums me out. It's like really disappointing because I'm such an idealist and I'm like, no, this is totally going to work. Everybody's wrong, and then I'm the wrong one. So, you know, that's good. I do that a lot. How well can you see that? So that's like 4 beds that look like that. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th bed, 6th bed, and 7th bed are a little bit spottier, and then the 8th, 9th, and 10th are I just sowed those recently, so I don't really know what those look like yet, but I think we're gonna have a nice little succession of spinach there. That was not a mistake. That was December. That was sown the same day as the carrots. Early December, I want to say around the 5th or 6th. I did a video about it, so around that time. Germinated right after the solstice, and that's great. I mean, that's gonna work, I think. Let's go say hi to the sheepies. So, one thing with the sheep this year is I'm trying to not have them damage our spring grasses too much. I held them up for a few days in some spots, so they're about 9 days behind where they usually would be. You know, you can see it's getting a little bit greener. And I'm trying not to hit the spring grasses so hard as to essentially, if I hit the spring grasses too hard, what happens is that the weeds, your pasture weeds, which is your ironweed and your lespedeza and those sorts of things, they come up a little harder. So I'm trying to not allow those to come up as hard. I want the spring grasses to succeed. So I slowed them down. I'm gonna try and slow them down just a little bit more and then speed them up really fast so that doesn't happen. So I'm starting to do field successions, right? Right here is chard. I'll show you a picture of that. I don't want to take the row cover off. And some lettuce. This is the hay garden right here under the tarp. But the lettuce and the chard I think are gonna do really well. I wanted to get them in early for a couple reasons. One, we were running out of room in the greenhouse, which is not really a good reason to do anything, but we didn't really have a choice. Our greenhouse is way too cramped. It's also why we planted some arugula and some kale here. This is also, these 3 beds, 1, 2, 3, are all gonna be kale. This bed is arugula and some radishes on the very end down there. But the arugula, we actually started doing some of it with the paper pot. So I'm starting my paper pot experiments, and it's going okay. I think that the paper pot, they always say this, and you should heed this note, you need really good bed prep. You need it to be nice and clean and, you know, kind of deep to be able to get the paper pot to drag through there, right? We don't have the transplanter, we have the zipper and the paper pots, and we're kind of trying that because I know the transplanter is not gonna work in my system, but I thought maybe I could get the zipper to work. And there's a bit of a learning curve. There's a lot of nuance to it. And I was trying to get away with not adding as much compost this year because I didn't feel like I needed to. I felt like I could just top dress maybe an inch instead of like 4 or 5 inches. But I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that wherever we're planting the paper pot. So that's something I'm trying to keep in mind. I'll do a whole thing about the paper pot and zipper and in the no-till system because I think it's really has a lot of potential, but I'm gonna have to get all the kinks worked out before I really wanna talk too much about it. One thing that's happening that's really cool that I'm excited about that's flowering is everbeds. So this is everbed. This is the winter boar kale we had in there. And it's basically been outside all winter and not done a lot of anything, just hanging out. That was the goal, is to keep it growing, and then in the middle of it growing, I'm gonna kind of clean out some of the little weeds that are in here, which is not much, it's actually pretty clean, and then plant tomatoes into the kale, like while the kale is still there. So that's the whole thing with everbed, it's ever planted. But everbed is, these kale are starting to flower, so I may actually be able to get some winter boar seed, everbed winter boar seed from this bed, and also transplant the tomatoes right into it. So that's kind of cool. I love the idea of starting some of my seed projects in my favorite experiment, which is everbed. So this winter boar has held up pretty good considering we've had a lot of single digits. We could just take a peek in the greenhouse. I want to show you some of the Vermont compost stuff. All right, so here's something I think is kind of cool. So you can see when we started our tomatoes the first time, we didn't have great mix. We had some old mix and I mixed in some new vermicast to kind of just give it some life. And it wasn't great. Like it germinated the tomatoes and stuff, but they weren't great. You can see, let's see if you can see this. You can see they're a little yellow right here on the lower leaves. But you can also see where some of those yellow ones, after I potted them up into the Vermont compost as the main block, right? It's a 4-inch block, soil block. They're really nice. The color has come back like crazy. And there's some of the just most, I don't know if you can see that color that well on this camera, but they're really doing well. And I'm very happy with how that Vermont compost has been performing all around, like all around. All this, all these beets here look great. This is not Vermont compost. This is, like, look at the difference. That's not beets, that's lettuce, but I mean, you can see the difference. All of our paper pots are in Vermont compost. You can see that right there's Vermont compost. Yeah, I mean, it stands out, that stuff. And so, yeah, and they're not a show sponsor or anything. I just like their product. Yeah, so I'm definitely going to continue to use that. Otherwise, I got a lot of stuff to do. I got to go harvest for Spark. So I'm going to do that. We'll talk about Spark soon. Thank you all for watching. Let me know if you have any questions about anything I glossed over. Also consider joining the Patreon page. That's patreon.com/farmerjesse. I have to get that up to $1,000 a month to be able to afford a second season of the podcast and to keep doing these videos and all that stuff. So think about that. $2 a month, $5, whatever you can afford. You can also Venmo us a donation if that's better, PayPal, whatever. Otherwise, you all, thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye.